I never told my son about my $40,000 monthly salary, even though he always saw me living a modest life. One evening, he invited me to dinner with his wife's parents, who were visiting from abroad. I decided to see how they would treat someone who appeared poor by pretending to be a simple, struggling mother. But the moment I walked into that restaurant, everything changed, and what happened that night shook my daughter-in-law's family in ways they never expected. And trust me, they deserved it. My son, Daniel, 35, never knew the truth about me. To him, I was always the tired mother who left early for work, came home exhausted, cooked with whatever was in the fridge, and quietly lived a simple life. I never corrected him. I never told him I had spent nearly 2 decades as a senior executive at a multinational corporation, signing million-dollar deals and making decisions that affected thousands of employees. Why would I? Money was never a trophy for me. I grew up believing that dignity was silent and worth more than flashy words. So I lived modestly. I used the same worn leather handbag for years. I shopped at sales and thrift stores. I saved and invested quietly, building wealth without ever needing to show it. True power, I had learned, doesn't announce itself, it observes. That Tuesday afternoon, Daniel called. His voice was tense, nervous in a way that reminded me of when he was a child who'd done something wrong. "Mom, I need a favor. Simone's parents are visiting from overseas. It's their first time here. We're having dinner Saturday at a restaurant. Please come." Something in his tone made me uneasy. I asked quietly, "Do they know anything about me?" There was a pause. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much," he admitted. The word simple hit me like a slap. My life, reduced to an adjective. I smiled softly. "Okay, Daniel. I'll be there." I looked around my apartment, modest but comfortable, and decided to give them exactly what they expected, a struggling, naive woman. I wanted to see how they treated someone who appeared to have nothing. Saturday arrived. I wore the worst outfit I owned, a shapeless, faded gray dress, old shoes, no jewelry, a worn canvas tote. My hair was tied in a messy ponytail. I looked like someone beaten by life, and I wanted them to see it. The restaurant was grand, exclusive. A place where menus didn't list prices, where each table could cost more than a monthly salary. As I stepped inside, I felt anticipation and sadness. Part of me hoped they might be kind, the other part knew better. Daniel greeted me nervously. Simone, his wife, looked perfect as always, polished and elegant, but her attention was elsewhere. And then I saw them, Simone's parents, seated like royalty. Her mother, Margaret, wore a sparkling emerald dress, jewels on every wrist and finger, hair in a precise bun. Her father, Edward, wore an immaculate gray suit and an oversized watch. Both radiated a cold, calculated superiority. I walked slowly to the table, head bowed slightly. Daniel's eyes widened. "Mom, you're here," he said, awkwardly. "Yes, here I am," I whispered, giving the timid smile of someone unaccustomed to such places. Simone greeted me with a cold, mechanical peck on the cheek. Margaret's eyes studied me. Judgment. Disdain. Disappointment. She extended a hand, weak and perfunctory. Edward did the same. I took the seat furthest from them, unnoticed, unassisted. When the menus arrived, written in French, I pretended not to understand. "Do you need help?" Margaret asked, her smile fake. "Yes, please." "I don't know these words," I said meekly. She ordered something cheap for me and commented, "Something simple. We don't want to overdo it." Conversation started politely enough, then quickly twisted toward money. They mentioned their hotel, their car, their shopping sprees. I nodded along. "And what do you do?" Margaret asked sweetly, venom laced in her tone. I work in an office. A little of everything, paperwork, filing, I said softly. She exchanged a glance with Edward. Administrative work. How honorable. When food arrived, they ate lavishly, talking about prices and exclusivity. I ate quietly, simpler portions, savoring nothing expensive. Margaret probed further. Does Daniel's mother live alone? Must be hard, without much support. Does your salary cover everything? I smiled calmly. I manage. I don't need much. She sighed dramatically. Oh, Eliza, you are so brave. Though, of course, one always wants to give more to their children. The jab was clear, I had given less than enough. Simone fiddled with her napkin, Edward nodded stiffly, and Daniel clenched his fists under the table. I let them talk, coldly calm, letting their arrogance reveal itself. Margaret boasted of their wealth, their properties, their expensive tastes, everything meant to impress. Then she asked, pointedly, if I had helped Daniel with anything when he married. Not much, I said, quietly. A small gift. That's all. Margaret smiled condescendingly. How sweet. Every detail counts, doesn't it? I nodded, smiling just slightly, as the cold river of my anger flowed beneath the surface. They were showing themselves exactly as they were, shallow, judgmental, insecure. And I was watching it all. The waiter brought dessert. Margaret ordered the most expensive option, pointing out the edible gold flakes. I chose something simple, inexpensive, and savored it with quiet satisfaction. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every day. In a calm, almost casual voice, Margaret continued, Eliza, now that we're all here, I think it's important we have an honest conversation as a family. Her expression shifted, adopting a falsely maternal softness. Daniel is our son-in-law, and we care deeply for him. Simone loves him, and we respect that choice, but as parents, naturally, we want the very best for our daughter. Daniel stiffened. Mom, maybe this isn't the right time. Margaret raised a hand. Let me finish, son. This is important. She looked at me. Eliza, I understand you've done your best raising Daniel alone. Truly, I respect that. But now, he's married. He has responsibilities. And Simone and he deserve stability. Stability? I asked softly. Yes, she said sweetly. Financial, emotional stability. We've helped them, and we will continue to help. But we also believe Daniel shouldn't carry unnecessary burdens. Her tone left no room for doubt. She was calling me a burden. Simone fiddled with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. Daniel's jaw clenched. Burdens? I repeated, quiet but firm. Margaret sighed. Eliza, I don't mean to sound harsh. But at your age, living alone on a modest salary, it's natural for Daniel to worry about you. He cares. But we don't want that worry affecting his marriage. Understand? Perfectly, I said. She smiled, pleased. Good. That's why we wanted to speak to you. Edward and I thought of a solution. We could provide a small monthly allowance, something comfortable so Daniel wouldn't have to stress about you. Of course, modest, just enough to support you. I stayed silent, watching her, letting the room hold its breath. And in return, she added, we'd only ask that you respect Daniel and Simone's space. Give them freedom to build their life together without interference. The offer was clear, a bribe disguised as charity. Pay me to vanish from my son's life. To disappear quietly. Daniel snapped. Mom, that's enough. Daniel, calm down. We're adults here, Margaret interrupted, smiling falsely. I lifted my napkin, wiped my lips, sipped water, and let the silence stretch. All eyes turned to me, Margaret with expectation, Edward with arrogance, Simone ashamed, Daniel desperate. I spoke. My voice had changed, it was no longer timid, no longer small. It was firm, clear, cold. Interesting offer, Margaret. Very generous of you. She smiled triumphantly. I leaned forward slightly. Just to understand clearly, how much did you consider a modest monthly allowance? Margaret blinked. $500, maybe $700. $700 a month, for me to disappear from my son's life. She hesitated, flustered. Well, that's not quite how I meant it. That's exactly how I interpret it, I said evenly. How did you help with the house down payment? The honeymoon? Tell me the numbers. She nodded proudly. $40,000 for the house. The honeymoon, $15,000. A 3-week tour of Europe. $55,000 invested in my son and daughter-in-law, I said slowly. And what did it buy you? Respect? Real love? Or obedience? The atmosphere shifted. Margaret froze. Throughout dinner, you've spoken only of money. You calculated my worth with your wallet, $700 a month. That's what I'm worth to you. Edward cleared his throat. I think you're misinterpreting. And what were her intentions? I asked sharply. Pity. Humiliation. To offer me alms so I'd vanish. So you wouldn't be embarrassed by my so-called poverty. Daniel turned pale. Mom, please. No, Daniel. Not yet. I placed the napkin down, leaned back. Timidity gone, shrinking gone. I looked Margaret in the eyes. You said you admire women who struggle, who are brave. Have you ever struggled alone? Built something without anyone supporting you? Raised a child alone? Margaret faltered. I have my own achievements. Like what? I asked. Tell me. I manage investments, oversee properties, make decisions for our businesses, she said. I nodded. Businesses your husband built. Investments from money he earned. Properties you inherited or managed. Correct? Edward spoke up, annoyed. That's unfair. My wife works as hard as I do. Of course, I said calmly. But there's a difference between managing what already exists and creating it from nothing. Between inheriting an empire and building one brick by brick, don't you think? Margaret pressed her lips together. 40 years ago, I was 23. A secretary in a tiny company. Minimum wage. Rented a room. Ate the cheapest meals. Alone. No help. One day, I got pregnant. The father left. My family turned away. I chose to keep going. I worked 12-hour days. Studied at night. Learned everything I could, accounting, finance, administration, while raising a child alone. 20 years of sacrifice and relentless effort. And I succeeded. How much do you earn now? Margaret whispered. $40,000 a month, I said, calmly. The room froze. Daniel dropped his fork. Simone's eyes widened. Edward frowned. Margaret's mouth hung slightly open. I am the regional director of operations for a multinational corporation, I continued. I oversee 5 countries. Budgets of hundreds of millions. Decisions affecting over 10,000 employees. Contracts you wouldn't read without a lawyer. Daniel was pale. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't need to know, I said softly. I wanted you to value effort, not money. To become a person, not an heir. Because money corrupts. Simone whispered, then why live so simply? Because true wealth isn't shown off. Because the more you have, the less you need to prove it. I looked at Margaret. That's why I came tonight looking like this. To see how you would treat someone who appeared to have nothing. And now I know your true colors. Margaret turned red with shame, rage, and humiliation. Ridiculous. Why didn't anyone know? Because I let them believe it, I said. I live simply. I save, invest, multiply my wealth quietly. I don't flaunt it. And yet, here you are, thinking $700 a month could erase me. Edward cleared his throat. Still, your behavior, misinterpreting our intentions, was rude. Rude? I said, staring at him. You told me I was a burden. Offered alms. Condescended all evening. And now you lecture me. I stood, and every eye followed. Money does not buy class, empathy, or humanity. You have plenty of it, but you lack what matters. And that is the difference between you and me. Simone had tears in her eyes. Mother-in-law. I had no idea. Yes, you didn't. But your parents knew exactly what they were doing, humiliating a woman they thought had nothing. Until now. Margaret trembled. You have no right. I have every right, I said firmly. Because I am your son's mother. Because I deserve respect, not for my money or my job, but because I am human. Something you forgot tonight. I faced Margaret one last time. You offered $700 a month to vanish. Let me counter, I will give you $1 million if you can prove you've ever treated someone without money with real kindness. She opened her mouth, closed it, silent. Exactly, I said. You can't. To you, people are only worth what's in their bank accounts. That is the difference between you and me. I built wealth. You just flaunt it. I earned respect. You buy it. I have dignity. You have bank accounts. I picked up my worn canvas tote, dug out a sleek black card, and placed it on the table in front of Margaret. This is my corporate card, I said evenly. Unlimited. Pay for tonight's dinner, and a generous tip. Consider it a gift from a broke and naive mother. Margaret stared at it like it had venom. Black, glossy, my name engraved in silver, Eliza Sterling, Regional Director. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned it over, then looked at me, her superiority gone, replaced by something I never expected, fear. I don't need your money, she said finally, voice broken. I know, I replied, calm. But I didn't need your pity either, which you offered all night. Take this as a gesture of courtesy, something your travels and fine dining never taught you. Edward slammed his hand on the table. Enough. You're out of control. This is disrespectful. Respect? I repeated. Where was your respect when your wife asked if my salary could cover my life? Where was it when you suggested I was a burden to my son? Where was it when you tried to buy me off? Edward's jaw tightened. I continued. Margaret, you wanted control. To make sure the poor mother wouldn't ruin your daughter's perfect image. You tried to eliminate the weak link. Problem is, you picked the wrong link. I looked at Simone. Her head bowed, hands trembling. Simone, I said softly. She raised tearful eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. No, I interrupted. You knew how your parents behave. Maybe you didn't know about my money, but you saw how they treat those they consider inferior, and you didn't stop them. I wanted to, but they're my parents, she sobbed. I know, I said. And Daniel is my son. I let him live his life, choose his wife, make his own path. That's how you love, with freedom. Not with money. Not with control. Not with manipulation. Daniel stepped closer. Mom, forgive me. For not asking, for assuming, his voice broke. I hugged him. You don't need to apologize, son. I acted so you could grow independent, value what matters, not depend on me financially. But yes, your care, your worry, that's important. That's how empathy is learned. Lessons money can't buy. Daniel hugged me tighter. I'm so sorry. Margaret stood, rigid, watching. You lied. You deceived us. You came with hidden intentions, in bad faith. That's true, I nodded. I acted. Pretended. Just like you do every day. What does that mean? Edward asked. You hide behind money, jewels, vacations, everything you can buy, but inside, there is nothing. No real conversation, no genuine interest, no substance beyond a bank account. Margaret gave a bitter laugh. Coming from someone who lied, hypocrisy. Perhaps, I said. But my lie revealed your truth. And now you can't hide. You see me. You felt every word I stored, every insult disguised as advice. And I won't forget it. The waiter approached timidly. Excuse me, anything else? Edward snapped. The check. Margaret slumped in her chair, defeated. Eliza, she said softly, voice low, this doesn't have to ruin our families. Daniel and Simone. I cut her off. Let what? Expose your true self. Too late. The damage is done. We can't pretend anymore. You treated me with disdain, and now you know I saw it. And you will remember. Edward cleared his throat. You provoked this. Yes, I said. Because I needed to see. I needed to confirm what I suspected, you are not good people. Your money doesn't make you better. You judge those who don't have as you do. That is your reality. Margaret wiped a tear. We are not bad people. Maybe not, I said. But you're far from good. That matters. The waiter returned with the check. Margaret glanced at my black card. I'm not using this. We'll pay as usual. Perfect, I replied. Keep it as a reminder. Not everything is as it seems. The woman you scorned all night has more than you, and not just money. She pushed the card back. I don't want it. Or your lecture. Keep it, I said. Someday you'll meet someone like me again. And you'll make the same mistake, because you never learn. Edward handed the waiter a golden card. The waiter left. Silence thickened. Simone cried softly. Daniel held my hand. Margaret stared at the wall. Moments later, the waiter returned. Sir, the card was declined. What? Edward shouted. Declined, the waiter repeated. Edward fumed, handing another card. Declined again. He stormed out to call the bank, red-faced. Margaret stayed seated, humiliated. I pulled out my old wallet, a heavy metal, translucent card, and placed it in front of her. This is a Centurion card. Invitation only. Annual spending minimum $250,000, annual fee $5,000. Benefits you can't imagine. The waiter took it with reverence. 2 minutes later, all settled, Miss Sterling. I stood, grabbed my tote, looked at Margaret one last time. Dinner was delightful. Thank you for showing me exactly who you are. You saved me time, energy, and disappointment. Margaret's eyes were red with rage, not tears. This doesn't end here, she whispered. You can't erase what you saw tonight. You will live with that knowledge, I said. Every time you see me, every fake smile, you will remember. Franklin. I mean Edward, checked his phone. Temporary block, resolved tomorrow. Yes, that's right, I said, casually. Family is for helping each other, isn't it? Even if it's $700, or, in this case, $800 for dinner. Daniel said softly, Mom, let's go. Enough. Right. Enough, I said. I looked at Simone. You are not to blame for your parents. You can choose how you act. How you treat others. How you'll raise your own children. Simone nodded, tears streaming. I paused at the door. Turned back. Margaret, one more thing. You said you speak 4 languages. Tell me, which one taught you to be kind? No answer. Exactly, I said. You can speak 100 languages and still say nothing worth listening to. I stepped outside. Night air hit my face. Daniel walked beside me. Mom, are you okay? Perfectly. Better than ever, I replied. And you, Daniel? I'm processing. Proud, and foolish. Blind. You're not foolish, I said. You saw exactly what I wanted you to see. I did it on purpose, I said, because I needed you to grow up without leaning on me, without assuming there was always a safety net. You had to fight, to earn, to value what you built on your own. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand. Now I also understand why you never complained, why you never asked for help, why you always seemed calm, because you needed nothing. I smiled. I needed plenty, son. But none of it could be bought. I needed to see you grow, to become a good man, to make wise choices. And I did, even with Simone in your life. Daniel's voice was soft. Even with Simone. Yes, I said. She is not her parents. She can grow, she can change, but that depends on her and you, on the values you choose to follow together. He was quiet, thinking. A taxi pulled up beside us, I had called it on the way out. I opened the door. Mom, can I ask you something? Daniel stopped me. Of course. Why did you pretend to be poor? Why not just tell them the truth? I closed the taxi door and faced him. I had to know, Daniel. I needed to see if my instincts about Simone's family were correct. Unfortunately, they were. He lowered his gaze. I'm sorry. You don't apologize for them, I said softly. But you do need to decide what kind of husband and father you want to be. Tonight, you've seen 2 ways of handling power and money. Margaret and Edward use it to dominate, to humiliate, to elevate themselves. I use it to live freely, to help quietly, to build a life of substance. You choose which path to follow. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand. I got into the taxi and rolled down the window. Mom, one last thing. Will you ever forgive them? I paused. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Nor does it mean letting it happen again. Maybe someday, if they truly change and start seeing people as humans, not numbers. Until then, I'll be polite, distant, cautious. And me? He asked. Do you forgive me for assuming, for not asking, for letting this dinner happen? I smiled tenderly. There's nothing to forgive, Daniel. You acted with love. The rest was their doing, and a little mine, because I chose to play their game. He gave a weak smile. You won. I won. I nodded. I don't feel victorious. I feel tired, because I confirmed a truth I hoped didn't exist. Some people never change, some families remain broken even with money, some voids cannot be filled by anything in a bank. The taxi driver cleared his throat. Shall we go, ma'am? Yes, one moment, I said, looking at Daniel. Go to Simone. Talk to her, listen, support, but also be honest. Set boundaries now, or this repeats. I will, he promised. I love you, Mom. Now more than ever. I love you too, son. Always have. Always will. Love isn't measured by money. And that is a lesson they will never learn. Daniel walked toward the restaurant again. I signaled the driver. The taxi pulled into the glowing city streets. I watched Daniel's thoughtful figure fade into the night, proud that he was growing, choosing to be better. The city lights flickered past the window. I opened my canvas tote and checked my phone. 3 messages, one from my assistant, one from a colleague, and an unknown number. Simone. Mother-in-law, please forgive me. I didn't know my parents would act like this. I am ashamed. I need to talk. I stared at it, then set the phone aside. No rush. Change requires reflection, not impulsive words. The driver glanced at me. You okay, ma'am? You walked out quietly, like you'd been through a war. I smiled faintly. Something like that. He nodded knowingly. 20 years driving. Seen drunk fights, breakups, family arguments. That look, you just said what you'd been holding inside for years. I nodded. Exactly. Do you believe in truth? I asked him. Honesty, he said. Not always the absolute truth, but honesty, speaking how you feel, without masks, even if it hurts or costs you. That lasts. I smiled. She sounds like a good woman. My wife? She was. 40 years together. Never doubted each other because we always said what we felt. That's a gift. I nodded. It is. The taxi stopped at a red light. Can I ask something personal? Go ahead. Are you rich? I blinked. Depends how you define it. Money? Yes. Happiness? Also yes. Peace, health, a son I love, work I care about, that makes me rich. He nodded. True wealth doesn't need to be shown. The light turned green. And the restaurant? He asked. I pretended to be poor. To see their true colors. He laughed. Seriously brilliant. And? Like garbage. Humiliated. Offered charity. Treated as invisible. But it confirmed my instincts. They weren't worth my respect. And now they know who I am. He whistled softly. Epic. We arrived at my building, an older, modest place. Nothing luxurious, just safe and mine. You live here? He asked. Yes, I said. I'm normal. I just have more money than most. Money is a tool, not an identity. He smiled. I paid the $30 fare with a $100 bill. Keep the change. Listening and reminding me about honesty, worth more than $70. Thank you, he said, reverently. I nodded, stepping out. And remember, truth changes worlds, one honest conversation at a time. The taxi drove away. I gazed at my 5th-floor window, ascended the stairs, unlocked my apartment. Cold, simple, unadorned, perfect. I changed into worn pajamas, brewed tea, and sat on the sofa. Silence filled the space, yet I felt fully alive. Free from pretending. Free from hiding. Free from tolerating disrespect. That night, I didn't just expose Margaret and Edward. I freed myself. And that was priceless, far beyond any sum in my accounts. My phone buzzed. Another message, this time from Daniel. Mom, did you get home safely? I smiled. I quickly typed back, yes, son. I'm home and resting. His reply came immediately. I love you. Thank you, for being who you are, for teaching me, for never giving up. A tear slid down my cheek, not from sadness, but relief, love, and gratitude. I replied, I love you too. Always. I set the phone aside, sipped my tea, and looked around my apartment, my sanctuary, my truth. In the end, none of the money I had mattered. None of the accolades or promotions mattered. What mattered was this: peace, honesty, and being true to myself. Sunday morning arrived as it always did. Decades of habit trained me to rise with the sun. Even on my day off, I was awake early, brewing strong black coffee. I sat by the window, watching the city stretch awake, vendors setting up, people hurrying along the streets. Life moved on, indifferent to personal dramas. My phone rang. A familiar number. Daniel. Good morning, son. Morning, Mom. I need to talk. Something wrong? A lot, he admitted. After last night, Simone and I spoke for hours. Her parents were there too. It was intense. I sipped my coffee. Go on. He exhaled. I told them everything I felt at dinner. I told them I was ashamed that they treated you like garbage, that their behavior was intolerable, and I would never accept it again. And? I asked. At first, Margaret tried to defend herself. Said they only wanted to protect Simone, to give me a stable family, nothing bad-intentioned. Edward said I was overreacting, that my mom's response was too strong. I tightened my grip on the mug. Typical. But then Simone spoke, Daniel continued. She told them they were wrong, cruel, that she had seen every remark, every look, every disguised insult, and she was ashamed to be their daughter at that moment. I smiled faintly. That's good. It means she's waking up. Daniel's voice deepened. Margaret went hysterical. Yelling that Simone was ungrateful, that they'd sacrificed everything, given her the best life. Edward backed her up, saying we'd been manipulated by you, that it was all a setup. I let out a dry laugh. Of course it was my fault. That's what made them angriest, he said. I told them they were right, I did plan everything. But they fell into the trap because that's who they really are. They treat people they consider inferior poorly. You just gave them the opportunity to show it. Well said, I murmured. A pause. Then Daniel continued, Mom, we decided something last night. Simone and I will set boundaries with her parents. We won't cut them off, but no more comments about money, no comparisons, no controlling us. If they can't respect that, they'll face the consequences. And? I asked. They didn't accept, he said. They left furious. Claimed we were ungrateful, warned we'd regret it. Franklin said he might change his will. Margaret said Simone had chosen the wrong family. I shook my head. Emotional blackmail, the last resort of those with no argument. But it didn't work. Simone stood firm. I stood firm. They left without a word, without looking back. And Mom, it felt like a weight lifted. Because it was, I said. You freed yourselves from living under their control. Now you can build your life on your terms, not theirs. Thank you, Mom, Daniel said, voice trembling. For doing what you did last night. It was hard, but necessary. We needed to see who they really are, and Simone needed to see there's another way, honest, authentic, real. You're welcome, son. I did what I believed was right. There's something else, he said. Simone wants to visit you. She wants to apologize, but not just with words, she wants to explain, to learn. I paused. Tell her she can come, but not today. Let her think, reflect. Rushed apologies are hollow, thoughtful ones are real. I will, he promised. Mom, how are you feeling after all this? I looked out the window. The sun was high, the day begun. I'm well. Better than well. I'm at peace. I said everything I needed to say. No regrets. I love you, Daniel said. I love you, too, I replied. Rest. We'll see each other soon. I hung up, finished my coffee, and decided to take a long, aimless walk. Comfortable jeans, a simple top, worn sneakers, I stepped out into the living city. Families strolled, children ran, vendors called out. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. Most people here didn't have wealth, yet they laughed, hugged, and lived fully. I thought of Margaret and Edward, wealthy, traveling, flaunting possessions, but were they truly happy? Or were they trapped, chasing illusions, attempting to buy respect, love, and validation? An older woman sat beside me. Good morning, she said with a warm smile. Good morning, I replied. Beautiful day, she said. Very, I nodded. She offered bread to the pigeons. I come here every Sunday. My little moment of peace before the week starts. I understand, I said. I needed a moment of peace too. She nodded knowingly. Difficult week? Something like that, more like a difficult night, I admitted. She murmured wisely, sometimes a single night changes everything. You're right, I said. She gestured to the birds. Look at them. Big, small, scruffy, elegant, they all eat the same bread. No hierarchies. No pretense. Humans are the only ones who invent false measures of worth. We should learn from them. I smiled. Completely true. I should teach some people that lesson. She laughed. Oh, child, I just observe and share. Most don't listen. They're too busy chasing, comparing, competing. In the end, with or without wealth, we all turn to dust. Realistic, I commented. Reality, she corrected. The richest, most competitive people often die unfulfilled. Never truly lived, never truly loved. You remember that. Her words sank deep. Thank you for sharing that, I said. She patted my hand. Remember, it's how you treat others that lasts. That's the inheritance worth having. She stood, waved, and walked away. A small, humble woman, old yet wise beyond measure. I watched her go, grateful. Grateful for the reminder, for the truth. I stayed a while longer, absorbing the city, the people, the lessons. I felt no regret. Every word, every action of the night before had been necessary. Liberating. Honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is always the right path. 3 days later, a soft knock came at my door. I opened it. Simone stood there, no makeup, hair in a ponytail, jeans and a simple top. Vulnerable. Real. Different from the woman in the restaurant. Mother, she said softly. May I come in? I stepped aside. She entered, eyes taking in my modest apartment. I gestured to the sofa, she sat, hands folded. I sat across from her, silent, letting her find her words. I don't know where to start, she whispered. Start wherever you're ready, I replied. She took a deep breath. I came to apologize. But also to explain why my parents are the way they are, and why I stayed silent for so long. I nodded. My parents grew up poor, in a small town overseas. No electricity, no running water. They worked the fields as children, saw relatives die for lack of medicine. They went hungry. They promised themselves they'd never be poor again. They would do whatever it took. I understand, I said softly. That explains a lot. They worked endlessly. Built their lives from nothing. And money, to them, it's survival. Security. Safety. That's why they talk about it constantly, measure everything with it. Trauma shapes people strangely. Yes, I said. Trauma can twist love into control. Simone nodded, tears in her eyes. But that doesn't excuse how they treated you. I see that now. I see it all. And I want to change. I want to be better. I reached for her hand. Then start there, Simone. Start with awareness, empathy, and honesty. Everything else follows. That family is not blind obedience, Simone said quietly. I can love them and still not agree with them. Daniel helped me see it. You helped me see it. That night at the restaurant, when you revealed yourself, when you spoke your truth, it was like a veil lifted. I saw everything clearly. I nodded, smiling softly. I always knew something was wrong, she continued, wiping her eyes. I felt their way of measuring people was off, but I convinced myself it was me, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand. But you showed me there is another way to live. Where money doesn't define worth, where humility is strength, and authenticity is true wealth. I took a slow sip of water. Simone, I didn't come that night to change you. I came to protect myself, to see who I was dealing with. I know, she said. And I thank you. Your honesty saved me, from becoming my mother, from repeating the cycle, from teaching future children that value is measured in money. I don't want that. I won't be that. And your parents? I asked. Simone exhaled. Furious, hurt, humiliated. Margaret hasn't spoken to me in days. Edward sent a message saying I'd disappointed him, that I chose strangers over my own blood. That I'd regret it someday. Anne, how do you feel? She smiled faintly. Strangely, free. Light. Not guilty. That's new for me. That's good, I said. It means you made the right choice. We set boundaries, Mom, she continued. Daniel and I. They can be part of our lives, but only if they respect us. Respect our choices. Stop controlling us with money or guilt. If not, they'll have to accept distance. And how did they react? Badly, Simone admitted. Margaret said we were ungrateful, that they sacrificed everything. Edward threatened to cut off all financial support, as if that's what mattered. That's when I realized, they really think their value is in their wallet. Sad, I said quietly. Very sad, she agreed. So much wealth, yet no joy. They accumulate, compete, show off, but never stop to ask if they're happy, if they have peace, if they're connected to real people. They count possessions and feel victorious, but inside, they're empty. She paused, then met my eyes. Mother, I want to ask something. Can you teach me how to live with dignity? How to be rich without proving it? How to find peace in chaos? How to be strong without cruelty? I smiled warmly. Simone, that's learned by living, by falling and rising again. I can share my experience, guide you a little, but the rest is your journey. It won't be easy. People will judge, criticize, misunderstand. But if you stay true to yourself, peace follows. And peace is worth more than all the money in the world. I want that, she said firmly. Not just for Daniel, but for me. I deserve a life without pressure, without the need to impress, without fear of never being enough. Then begin, I said. Start small. Question your habits, your purchases, your motives. Ask yourself, is this for me or others? Does this bring peace, or just appearance? She nodded, determined. And my parents, will they ever change? I met her gaze honestly. I don't know. Change begins with recognition. They don't see a problem. They see the world as unfair, and themselves as victims. But you can change. Break the cycle. I will, she promised. With Daniel's support, and with your example. You don't need me, I told her. You just need your own inner compass, that voice you silence to please them. Listen to it. Trust it. Follow it. Simone wiped her last tears. Thank you, for your patience, your honesty, for not giving up on us. There's nothing to thank me for, I said. Just promise me this, when you have children, teach them the value of people, not the price. Teach empathy, humility, kindness. Things money can't buy, but worth everything. I promise, she said, firmly. With all my heart. We hugged, a real, warm, honest embrace. No pretense, no masks, just two women connecting as humans. Simone left an hour later, lighter, freer, hope shining in her eyes. I closed the door and sank into the sofa, glancing around my modest apartment. This was enough. Honest, authentic, real. I needed nothing more. Moments later, my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. Mom, Simone told me about her visit. Thank you for welcoming her, for listening, for giving her a chance. I love you more than words can say. I typed back simply, I love you too, son. Always. I set the phone down, watching the sunset streak the sky in orange and pink. And I realized, true wealth isn't about what you own, it's about the peace you carry, the people who surround you, and the pride in your reflection. Veronica and Edward had millions. I had this, tranquility, authenticity, love for my son. That made me richer than anyone counting coins, properties, or titles. I never needed to pretend again. I had learned, seen, and liberated what I needed. I had spoken my truth, set my boundaries, and protected my peace. For the first time in years, I didn't have to pretend. I was simply Eliza, mother, executive, survivor, fighter, rich in every way that truly mattered. And that was everything.